I'm Bob Dickie, and welcome to another episode of Taking the Leap podcast. Our guest today is Jim Klonairs. Jim and his wife, Lori, make up the dynamic team that have changed the face of Knoxville hospitality and the restaurant scene for the past 30 years. Together, they are the co-founders of Spaces in the City, where Lori is CEO and Jim is a creative genius behind the iconic Knoxville restaurants and spaces like the Kalamata Kitchen, Cafe 4, Kefi, Vida, the Vault, the Press Room, the Square Room, City Catering, and Bella in Maryville. Jim is a serial entrepreneur, having worked in multiple industries to include hospitality, janitorial, consulting, real estate, and commercial development. Jim earned his Bachelor of Fine Arts in Architecture and Interior Design and Graphic Design from the prestigious University of Tennessee. Jim is also active in his local community, supporting the prison ministry, Men of Valor, as an active executive board member. I'm really excited to learn more from Jim and what he has learned as a serial entrepreneur, the leaps he has made in his journey, how he overcame bankruptcy early in his career, and the importance he places on education and personal growth. I know you'll be motivated and inspired to hear his story, so let's jump right in. You're getting into some good content, but I want to allow you to unpack it the way you see fit with the audience. I plan on, like I shared, start in the email I sent you, is kind of diving in on the restaurant side of your career and letting you to unpack that. And then I'm really interested to like the story arc of your entrepreneurial journey and just picking out like things that you've learned. And does that sound good for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Wherever you want to go with it. I'm pretty, you know me, I'm an open book, and I don't have a problem sharing vulnerabilities. And I honestly think that the vulnerabilities that we share in mentoring or even with anybody, it does two things. One, it educates people from a huge level of trust. And number two, it builds some kind of unique relationship with people. When I was doing public speaking years ago, I found that I connected with large audiences better when I shared my spots, my vulnerabilities, because a lot of times people see some guy up on stage and think, well, gosh, I could never be like that guy up there. And then I start talking about the realities of my real life, not on stage, the challenges that I have, the failures that I've had, the abilities to get up off the ground and keep going when everybody else said, how can you do that after going through that? And I think it just really connects people well. And there's a huge education with it.
Well, I don't know if I want to miss all of this good content, so maybe we'll just leave it all in.
You can leave it in.
Okay. In light of that, let's just continue to keep rolling now that I know that the microphones are working and we got everything recording properly. So one of the things that I've really been fascinated about with your journey, Jim, is I want to tee the question up like this. I have heard that globally, one of the easiest ways into entrepreneurship and one of the most common ways into entrepreneurship is the restaurant business. You know, you take a look at immigrants that come to the United States. So often, various communities, one of the easiest things to do is to open up a little storefront. Maybe sometimes in the big cities, it could be a food cart or a food truck. And it's easy for them to recreate the food from home for their own community, and then people in the surrounding areas. It's a low barrier of entry. So that's number one. But number two, I've also heard from people who have been in the restaurant business that it is literally the hardest way to make a dollar, and it is so difficult to do it well and to scale and to grow. And I had a good friend of mine who was an investor. He had fantastically successful in other areas of life, and found himself in a situation where he had invested in a slew of Johnny Carino's restaurants. And quarter after quarter, these things were just losing money. He was writing huge checks, hundreds of thousands of dollars on a quarterly basis to cover cash flow losses. He couldn't make these things work. It was like an absolute disaster. And he was so glad to get rid of them. He was like, man, I will never be in the restaurant business again, Bob. It's like the margins are low. And as soon as I buy stock, it's already right. He was giving me all the reasons of why this was like a horrible investment for him. And then I know you. So here, and you haven't bought franchises. You have been a phenomenal restaurateur here in East Tennessee. You have started from concept, the idea, all the way to fruition of building out phenomenal restaurants, unique, distinctive, incredible culinary experiences, nightlife. So many of them are so very diverse. And you've been phenomenally successful as a master, I'll call you a master restaurateur for a long period of time in a very, very difficult space. And I'd like to understand how you did it, how you made this work.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because you kind of touched on, let's go backwards about 20 sentences here.
Yeah.
From a global standpoint, I totally agree that the easiest barrier to entry in entrepreneurship is a restaurant. If you look back at the early 1900s, my grandparents, who have long since been gone, they immigrated here from Greece. They came through Ellis Island. One of them landed in a small city, a small town called Starkville, Mississippi. It's where Mississippi State College is. Mm-hmm. And he ended up in a cafe called the People's Cafe. And it was just a diner. It was a storefront diner in a city. And, you know, he was an uneducated man by, you know, the litmus of what we think of education today. Mm-hmm. And I think it was easy to take all of their money that they had saved. And he didn't just start out that way. He started out, you know, probably working for somebody in New York. We don't know how he ended up in Mississippi. That was on my mom's side. Okay. And then my dad's side, he ended up in a small town in Mississippi called Lexington, Mississippi, even smaller. I mean, 1,500 people in the whole community. And he started out selling and making candy in New York, and somehow, we don't know how, ended up in Lexington, Mississippi, and opened up the Welcome Inn Cafe. So my entire background from the grandparent side was restaurant or hospitality industry. Mm-hmm. Now, fast forward, my parents, they met when they were in college. My mom and dad ran from the industry. They didn't want to be entrepreneurs. They were the first people to kind of go all the way through college. They have college degrees. They taught me the same thing. Go to college, get a good education, land a job, and work there for 35 to 40 years, and you're going to have a healthy, wonderful life. Mm-hmm. Not my gig. I went backwards. I went back to where my grandparents came in. I always had this passion and this drive to own my own business. I did go the path of education. I did land that first big job with the Coca-Cola company, and it really was enough to give me income until I could pursue my passion, mm-hmm. which was hospitality. I just always felt like I had the personality for it. It's not hard. It's a difficult business, but it's not hard. I mean, you provide a nice space to bring a community together and provide them some kind of nourishment, if you will, so that they can talk around the table and get a great experience at a fair price. And along the way, hopefully you make a little bit of money. The margins are thin. I mean, most restaurants are a 5 to 10% margin at best, unless you're in a quick service category, fast food business, and then those margins are higher. You're dealing with lower quality foods. A different level of employee, right. And definitely not putting millions of dollars into an interior and a build out. But I think for me, it was always a passionate dream. I knew when I was 12 years old that I was going to be in the restaurant business. Wow. There's a story there. It's a great story. You remember a guy here in town named Bill Regas?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Bill owned Regas Restaurant. I can't remember how many years they were in business. They were,
it was an iconic establishment.
Long time. When I was 12 years old, Bill Regas, I moved to Knoxville when I was 12, 62. So it's been 50 years. Bill Regas invited me and my dad to one of these Zig Ziglar, motivational speaking events. And I was just this impressionable 12-year-old kid. And I don't know who Bill Regas was at the time. I was a kid. And we drove all the way from West Knoxville, deep Farragut, downtown. We went to Regas Restaurant. My dad introduced me to Mr. Regas. My eyes became as big as saucers. And we went to it was the Coliseum at the time. We didn't even have a convention center in Knoxville. And it took us, when we got there, it took us almost a half hour to find our seats inside the Coliseum, because every 3 steps, someone was reaching up and shaking Bill Regas's hand. Oh, hi, Mr. Regas. How are you, Bill? And he knew every single person's name. And at the end of that day, having heard the greatest speakers of all time that were alive at that time, on the way home, my dad said, well, did you learn anything today? I said, yeah, I know what I want to do for a living. He goes, oh, who did you like best? Colin Powell, Zig Ziglar? And I go, oh no, I want to be like Bill Regas. He goes, what? I go, yeah, I'm going to be in the restaurant business, Dad. And he's like, oh no, what have I done? And Bill influenced me over the years the same way. And I always knew that I wanted to be in the restaurant business. I had no idea how hard it is to be in the restaurant business. We've got about 320 employees in our company today. Mm-hmm. And I was doing some math the other day. We have had, over the course of 35 years, over 4,800 employees.
That's amazing.
So that churn of people is it's crazy. The only 2 people that are there from the beginning are me and Lori. Mm-hmm. That's it. And Lori, quite honestly, she runs the operation. She is the CEO of the company, and she is the magic in the business. We have 2 distinct roles, and we kind of stay in our lanes. And I do, creative design, build of the concepts, and she does all the food and the beverage, and she manages, those 330 or whatever it is employees on a day-to-day basis. So when we're not building a new restaurant, I have nothing to do. It's kind of sad.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I would agree with that. I mean, I've watched you in these restaurants, and you have become the Bill Regas of Knoxville. I mean, I can't walk into one of your establishments where you're not engaged in conversation with most of the people in there. You're walking around table to table, shaking hands. I mean, one of the things that I want to unpack at some point is I feel like you're a master communicator, and you're also an expert at relationships. You know how to have.
Well, I think that is the differentiator, if you will, between me and Lori. She puts her head down and digs in, and I'm the A-type personality that, as you said, am really the ambassador of the businesses. I do walk around. I have the best job on the planet. I just get to go around, talk to people, make sure their experience is good, and if it's not, figure out a way to make it good. Mm-hmm. And if we failed, and it happens on occasion, let me reach back out to them and give me a restart. Let me try this again. We'll get it right eventually.
Well, let's continue the linear story. I mean, because there's so many of these establishments that I want to talk about. I mean, I'm obviously very passionate about what you did in the heart of Knoxville and being part of a revitalization effort with Cafe 4. I mean, I remember as a college student, and you mentioned a second ago that you went to school, and I'm very proud that you are a University of Tennessee graduate. You're one of our stellar alumni, so go Vols. But I remember back when I was going through a couple years after you, and you would run through downtown, you would run through Market Square, but you wouldn't stop. There was literally no nightlife there. There was nothing of importance, and you didn't bring your family down to that area. And you, I know I'm skipping maybe a little bit ahead because you had a couple of establishments where you kind of cut your teeth and learned the business. But I would, in my mind, one of your really big projects that helped revitalize the downtown areas when you and a group of investors came in and planted a flag at Cafe 4 and said, we're going to do something new and unique in the city. And it was a seed that started to grow. And today, that's the place you go. You go downtown and that little park, the little fountains, there's nightlife, families love it. And so to tell us how you got to that point. Like, so you're this little boy who fell in love with this iconic restaurateur and hospitality magnate there in Bill Regas. And tell me a little bit of your story arc to get you to Cafe 4.
Yeah, well, Cafe 4 was about the 7th restaurant in, believe it or not. We started with, Lori and I started with a little bitty restaurant over in Hamburg which is in the Bearden area. And it was a complete failure from the very get-go. We got pregnant with our first child a week after we opened. And remember, Lori was working in the business. I, at the time, worked for Coca-Cola. So that first restaurant was a disaster. Interestingly enough, I started a little, nowadays they call it a side hustle. I got to get the language right now, right?
Yeah.
Which was really not perceived as a very good thing back then. As a matter of fact, my mom and dad were right. You know, you work for a company, you work for the company. You don't do things on the side. You give them your all. Mm-hmm. I had negotiated differently with the owner of the local bottling company here in Knoxville. And I had a little side cleaning business. I don't know if you remember that, but I had a little janitorial company. And that janitorial company came to birth just to pay a commitment to borrowed money back to a bank. Because back then, we're talking about the early 80s, the mid 80s, I borrowed money without any collateral. It was a handshake agreement between a bank and I. And that failed restaurant put me, underwater, and started this little company just to pay bank debt back. It became extremely successful. I owned that company for 18 years. And it really was the thing that gave me the financial means to then go and pursue the restaurant business. And in 1999, we opened our first restaurant. So we did one in 87, and then we did one in 99. So it was almost 20 years later, 22 years.
You have a pretty good gap there. And that you're doing the janitorial services business in that interim? The
whole time, and worked for Coca-Cola until 96. So started a restaurant called Kalamata Kitchen, and it was a massive success. I mean, we dumped money into it. We built something from scratch. It was an instant success. There was a 2-hour wait every day of the night, every night of the week. It was really fantastic. And it really is where we cut our teeth and kind of got people in the market knew who we were after opening that restaurant. It was a Greek restaurant. It was the only real Greek restaurant in Knoxville. And it was in Farragut, which was really unique because there weren't a whole lot of things there. There's a whole series of things that happened, after Kalamata Kitchen.
Well, it's really interesting that you've got this gap between, you have this spectacular failure, your first restaurant that you always wanted to be a restaurateur, you open it up, it's a massive failure. And you're like, all right, and you kind of rebuild out of the ashes into your next one, which is a spectacular success. Are you able to pinpoint, like, if you had your top 3 reasons why your first one failed, or your top 3 things that you learned? What was it that you learned, and why did it fail, and how did you then pivot into the one that was such a success?
So in all honesty, the restaurant probably would have succeeded, but my wife got pregnant, and she was the director. She was running it. She was the chef, she was the host, she was the server, she was the bottle washer, everything. Mm-hmm. And she just got really sick with this first pregnancy. Actually, she was sick with all 3 pregnancies, and she couldn't be around the smell of food. Mm. And so, we had to bring in external management to run our restaurant, because I had a day job. And it was doomed for failure because there was no leadership in the restaurant anymore. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, that phrase right there it could run this entire gamut of my life. If you don't have leadership at the top, strong leadership, nothing will succeed, period. Everything rests and falls on the shoulders of the leader or leaders of any business. I don't care if it's restaurant or janitorial or whatever. The same thing happened in the janitorial business. I had that business for 18 years. It provided a wealth of money. I mean, I was very financially successful at a very young age. In my early 30s, I was making more money than most people. And I ended up giving that business to the employees 18 years after owning it. Handed it to them. I didn't charge them for it. I handed it over and said, this is now the employee's business. And that company made it, I think, 5 years, and it was gone. A multi-million-dollar company disappeared over a 5-year period. And the only reason I could figure out why that happened is because there was no real leadership at the top. Mm. But for my business, okay, our failure was something that we really couldn't control. We got pregnant, we had a baby, we got pregnant again, we had another baby 15 months later, we had another baby 17 months later. And so my wife was pregnant for 4 years, and it was just kind of crazy. So we kind of gave that a long rest. And during that period, I was running the janitorial company, which I didn't care for the company, to be honest. It was not a very sexy business. And I'm more about that ambassador that goes around and shakes hands and look at what we've done. And aren't you enjoying yourself? And well, you don't get that in the janitorial.
Yeah, that's not
your phone rings in the morning and your stomach goes nauseated because you know that no one's calling you to say, "Boy, you guys did a great job last night."
Yeah.
It was going to be an issue.
Yeah.
But in 1999, we now had a successful janitorial company. There was a massive gap between our first restaurant and our second one. And we poured money, time, energy, creativity into it, and it netted a great success. And then we ended up with, I think, 5 or 7 restaurants over the next 3 or 4 years in that period. And then there's a whole lot to the story, and I'm not going to be able to get into the mix of it all, but I ended up, I think you remember this, I ended up losing my entire company in 2002. We completely bankrupted everything. And I'll give you a high level of why that happened. We're working 80 hours a week each. And we're working all these different restaurants that we have. And we've got a lot of employees, and they're all great restaurants and people really like them. But we weren't being very good parents. And we didn't plan on that. We always wanted a family. We wanted to have a normal family, not a dysfunctional family. And, where all this money is flowing, and we're not even taking income from the restaurants. We're living off of the janitorial company, and all the money coming in from the restaurants is going to fund the next restaurant, the next concept. I was like on crack wanting to open up the next place. It was almost an addiction. And every time I'd open a restaurant, I was handing my wife, more work. Yeah. And so, long story short, right after 9/11, which affected so many people, it affected business all the way in East Tennessee horribly. We just basically crashed the snowball. We both came to an agreement. We just said, we're locking the doors. Didn't even consider selling them, because we were so emotionally tied to our businesses. And we just locked the door. We paid our employees. We paid as many vendors as we could. There were 2 big banks that we had done SBA loans for. They did not get paid. And we ended up filing Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which is horrible. But in hindsight, it gave me freedom again. Now, I own nothing. I'm absolutely as poor as you can be, but I have no debt. And I was able to pivot and go back into the job market. And our paths crossed along those ways. I can't remember when that was, maybe 2007 or 8 or 9, 10.
Probably. I think I met you in 2000. It would have been like 2010, 2011, right in there.
Yeah. So we had already come back into the industry in 2007 and 8 and built Cafe 4, as you said, in an area that everybody said, you are a lunatic for doing this. I mean, all the buildings to the left and right of me and across the street were all boarded up. You wouldn't go downtown and run a business because no one went there. It was dangerous.
Yeah, to give context to that statement, I'll validate what you're saying. I mean, literally, I would run through that park, and I would always, as a UT student, on a training run, I was on a track team, and we'd do a distance run downtown, and we would run through sections of the city, and your cadence would pick up because you knew you were kind of in a dangerous area, right? And where Cafe 4 is today, that little strip, I mean, everything was boarded up. There was a homeless problem. There was, drug deals going down. I mean, it was like so when you told me that, you're like, yeah, we were the very first ones to open up a restaurant here. I was like, hold on a second. You mean you were the one to kind of plant the flag and say, we're going to make a presence here and we're going to revitalize this area? It's absolutely stunning.
Well, and to give credence to where it really goes, it was really, our mayor at the time was Bill Haslam, who then became our governor. And Bill and a handful of other deep pocket developers and investors had made a plan to revitalize our city. And in the process, we were approached as part of that leadership team to help launch this revitalization. So it really wasn't Lori and I going, oh yeah, let's go downtown and try something in a crazy.
No, it's a group of people. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a group of people, but we were ready. It had been a long time. We had not been in the restaurant business since 2004. 4 years had gone by, and we had an opportunity to really make an impact in the city and take a chance. And really, there was no financial burden on me to do this. The financial piece of this restaurant was completely taken care of. We were just asked to bring our expertise in creating a concept, building the concept, creating a menu that people would want to gravitate to, and then an interior that people would want to come downtown to see and be part of. And so it was an opportunity that I felt we couldn't pass up. Lori didn't want to do it at first. I had to sell her on it. And remember, she had not really been in the business for almost 5 full years at this point. And we had gotten stung really hard in the early 2000s. So, it's like putting your finger in an electrical socket. You only do it once, and then you go hit the breaker the next time, right? But I was able to, through my excellent communication skills.
And you're also one heck of a salesman, apparently.
I was able to talk her into it, and it was an overnight success. And people started coming downtown and eating at this restaurant, and then people around us were like, oh my gosh, downtown is happening again. And look what these people were able to do. And they're busy all the time. And we were serving almost 600 people a day, every day of the week there. That's a lot of volume for a little restaurant. And then everybody kind of got the bug. Well, if they can do it, we can do it. And then you had other restaurants pop in, and then other restaurants that suffered through the years down there were all of a sudden, doing well. And then it's like the floodgates open.
And more retail comes in, and
this phenomenal place. And look at it now. I mean, I think there's over 90 restaurants within a 2-mile period, a 2-mile area of downtown.
And they're building out the condos, the apartments, so it's become a place to live and thrive. I mean, downtown today is vastly different from when I was a student at UT in the 90s. It's pretty impressive. I want to hover on this point just for a second, though, because like early on in your career, you talk about how you and Lori are doing it yourselves. And you took out the SBA loans and bank loans and things like that. And then this deal manifests itself in a little bit different way, where all of a sudden you have some iconic partners. And one of those iconic partners that you mentioned was Bill Haslam, the governor of he was the mayor of Knoxville. Then he became the governor of Tennessee, and is from a very prominent family here in East Tennessee, as his family are the owners of Pilot, Flying J Oil, and now the owners of the Cleveland football team, the Cleveland Browns. Big donors, University of Tennessee. So all of us, like so many people would want to be like in line to be in business with Bill and that family. And there's a multitude of other iconic entrepreneurs that were part of that process. And here you're getting a phone call or having a conversation saying, hey, Jim, we want you to be a part of this. And so hovering on this point for a second, because I've heard this so often, that business is really easy. It's all about relationships. And somewhere along the line, you've got a relationship here where a door opens for you to be a part of this special group. And to talk a little bit about building relationships, lifelong relationships, how important relationships are in business. I just like to get your feedback and insight on that.
Yeah, and I think at age 62, I realized the value of relationships more than ever in my life. Probably now more than any other stage in my life. We have these egos. All of us have these egos, and when you're successful and you're able to do things on your own, you kind of just get yourself in a vacuum. You just kind of put your head down and do your own thing. And you know people. We all network through people where we can. But I was always one of these people that kind of just did my own thing. Lori's the same way. She's maybe even more so. She just puts her head down and gets things done. Through the years, And even when we were approached by this leadership group, yes, they did approach us and we did, raise our hand and come in, but we didn't get to, I've never hung out with, Bill Haslam or Rodney Lawler or this group of really high level entrepreneurs, businessmen, politicians. We're not in that league. Mm-hmm. And we're younger than all of these men were anyway. So we really didn't get to play in their sandbox. We just said, yeah, we're willing to go with you. You're going to take a chance on us. We'll give it our all, and we'll do that. Now, fast forward today, now we're talking about 15 years later. Man, I do more collaborative work, abundance mentality over scarcity mentality. Mm-hmm. These are kind of my mantra. I do more counsel now than I have when I was in my 30s, 40s, or 50s. And I do it. What's interesting is I don't just counsel with people that are older than me. I counsel more with people that are younger than me now. I was with somebody yesterday who's 26 years old. Mm-hmm. And this kid is knocking it out of the park. And I just was grabbing onto everything that he said because technology is different. Heck, I even struggle with, being on Facebook and social media. I just can't do what these young people are doing. And they have such good ideas. Mm-hmm. They just don't know how to execute it. And so you get these great ideas from this youth, and then you get this drive from these 30-year-olds that all have this amazing drive that I'm starting to lose the drive in my 60s. Mm-hmm. You couple that with wisdom and the knowledge of how to execute something with excellence. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. It's like the biggest opportunities are in front of us, not behind us. All right. And I know that. And I'm just now realizing that in my 60s. And I wish I'd done it. I wish I'd done it years younger, to be honest. Who knows?
I love that insight. I've heard from a couple of other very successful individuals say the same thing, that they're like, I want to be able to mentor with people who are a generation ahead of me, to get their insight and their wisdom, to see what they've seen, to see what they've learned. But at the same time, because the world is changing so rapidly, and the younger generations are, Gen Z and the millennials are going to outnumber the baby boomer population. They're now moving into those areas of our economy and politics. And these individuals have said, I want to mentor with the younger generation, meaning I want to learn from them. I want to see what's important to them. What are they seeing? What are they doing? And when you do it on both sides, like you've just articulated, it can really be powerful.
It is powerful. It is powerful. And I would just say to anybody that's listening to this podcast right now, if you're young, heed those words. Talk to people Bob's age. Talk to people my age. And keep talking to people your own age. Because if you can scale that whole spectrum of knowledge and the experiences that we've had, you can do anything that you want to do in life. I don't care how big your dreams are, you can accomplish it. Mm-hmm. It's not hard. You just got to figure out how to execute it and keep those ideas flowing all the time and tweak it. It'll get better.
Yeah, and I love the hope and the optimism that you have in your voice and that you share. I mean, this has been just who you are since the moment I met you, and back in 2010, 2011. Anytime that we've had these conversations, no matter what's going on in the world, no matter what's going on in society, you're always a glasses half full and excited about the future, excited about opportunity, things are happening. And one of the things that I think is a reason for that is that you've always been, I classify you as a lifelong learner. Anytime that I get together with you or chat with you, you're talking about, somebody that you just chatted with, or a book you're reading, or a conference you've gone to, you're just constantly acquiring skills. Can you maybe share a little bit how that has impacted you over your journey, and how that you have applied that specifically to the restaurant business and then other businesses that you've been a part of?
Yeah, I think that my biggest area for growth and knowledge occurred between 2002 and 2020, 19 or 20. Mm-hmm. I worked for the Franklin Covey Company, And of course, Franklin Covey is a leadership development company, and they're a worldwide company. And I started out with them in public speaking and training. And I gobbled down books. I mean, I could not get enough of these, these books, Jim Collins and Stephen Covey and Stephen M.R. Covey, and just so many books, starting with 7 Habits, right, of highly effective people.
Yes.
And just gobbling that information. Of course, then having the ability to train in that material and then speak it back out to people to be authentic, you have to live it. Mm-hmm. You can't just gobble up a book and talk about, Jim Collins' Good to Great like you've executed it. Mm-hmm. I mean, we do. I hear people all the time talk about it like they have gravitated to this one phrase out of a book, like they have some amazing knowledge and personal skill. We all do that. We pull these little narratives out, but when you're working for a company and you're training people in that content, if you don't really exercise the habits of what you're teaching, you come across as non-authentic. Yeah. So I became authentic by actually taking on those habits. And in doing so, by taking on the habits, I became great in my field. And I went from good or average to good and then to great in certain areas. By far not everything. I still have horribly failed habits, but it really honed in on my skill set. Books are good. Nowadays, we've got books on tape or on digital, whatever you call it. But, anybody can listen to a book, gobble down that information. But the key fact is it's just words in one ear and out the other unless you put it into action. Mm-hmm. You've got to put it into action. And all of our habits, whether they're good or bad, can be changed in a very short period of time. 3 to 4 weeks of doing something with excellence, consistent, will completely change your habits. And I mean, I can tell you, I was not a time management guru back in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. I was operating off of a Post-it notes and a yellow pad and had stuff everywhere, and I'd miss things, and I had a task list and couldn't get everything accomplished. I didn't prioritize anything. And then I got involved in time management, and I started studying it and then changing my habits. And now I operate off of a digital task list, and everything's prioritized, and my calendar's buttoned down, and I'm 5 minutes early to every meeting, which means I'm on time. Mm-hmm. And, if you're 5 minutes early, you're on time. If you're
on time,
there
you're
at
late.
the time of the meeting, you're late.
Yeah.
And I know how to run a meeting effectively. All of these things, and get things done in those meetings when we have to do it. Cut through all the distractions that we have. I mean, my gosh, the amount of distractions that we have in this day and age. And I'm ADHD and OCD, and a squirrel goes by and I'm looking at it. And I know how to hone in on the things that I need to. So that period of 2002 until I retired from Franklin Covey in 2020 really was the thing, I think, that made me good and actually great in some areas of my life. Now that I'm not there anymore, and I've slowed down my build. I mean, we're getting ready to do probably 2 to 3 more restaurants. I mean, we're talking about it. We're going to go look at one this week as an opportunity. And then we're talking to another guy about another one in Bearden. And, those things I can now do just like that. I can take a building, envision what it's going to look like, get all the experts involved, follow through, get it built, set it up, hand it over to my wife. She'll create the menu. She'll put the staff in place, and we'll operate it from day one as a elevated concept that people want to go to. Mm-hmm. That always wasn't the case. Yeah. Life experience gets you to that place. And all the information that we take in. Bob, I've learned so much from you, Bob, over the years. We got to spend a lot of time together for a year. A lot of time. We had hundreds of hours of windshield time.
Oh my gosh, we had so much fun. We driving back and forth to Atlanta multiple times, and there would be times that we would be laughing so hard I was crying, and then other times where we were so exhausted when I was crying, I'm like, give me 10 minutes of sleep, and that way we don't wreck into a guardrail. But yeah, I've considered you such a dear friend, and I've learned so much from you over the years, and you always motivate and inspire me. And one of the things as you were talking about this, in the learning and the journey, and so the difference between someone who's saying something, it just you sense it, right? You sense it as a person who is just quoting something versus somebody who is living it. And you're a person who I've never heard something come out of their mouth where I was like, he's just throwing some random quote. When you talk, it has always been something that's like, I know that Jim's actually living this. He's putting it into practice. He's got fruit on the tree. And it strikes me as you're learning these principles from Franklin Covey, you're applying it to your life. It's making your entrepreneurial journey and your entrepreneurial pursuits better and different. And you're, as you said, you're honing your skills. So I'd love to hear how that story arc from Cafe 4 to the ones that you have right now, how that's been manifesting. I mean, you've got, so it was Cafe 4, and then you've got Kefi, you've got Vida, you're opening up more. I mean, here you are, you're in your 60s. And I tell people all the time, like, 60 is the new 40. And I'm running into more and more people who are entering into their 60s or even entering into their 70s, where in our grandparents' generation, this would have been a time where people were slowing down, we're going to retire. And I'm seeing actually more and more people who they're entering these years and they're at their absolute prime. They're doing bigger deals. They're having greater success. They're doing like these incredible things because of all these years of knowledge and growth, and they're applying it and just having all this opportunity. So explain to me, how you've taken these things from Franklin Covey, applied it to your life, and the excitement that you have as you're entering into your 60s and, having all this opportunity in front of you.
Well, I think there's two things there, and you've covered a pretty broad spectrum there, but I think one of the things is I still have tremendous drive to create. So if you remember, my college education was a lot different than yours. I mean, you're a Harvard MBA guy. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. I went to school and wanted to get out. I never really wanted to go to college. And so I played in college the whole 4.5 years that I was there. And when I got out, I found myself with a fine arts degree. Well, what are you going to do with a fine arts degree? Paint, draw. I wanted to have money. I wanted to live life. I didn't want to settle for status quo. And I got really lucky and landed a great job. But the reality is, all of the things we've done over our lifetime lead us, if you're growing as a human, it leads you to another level of expertise. Well, you come to where I am now. I mean, I think we've done 19, maybe 20 businesses in 35 years. We've owned 20 companies in 35 years. 20 companies. What kind of an idiot owns 20 companies? I mean, why do I keep doing this? And it's like, I really think I have a little bit of a creative addiction. Mm-hmm. It's that artist in me that wants to create something from scratch. That's almost my passion. I really don't want another business, but I'm probably getting ready to do another couple of them. And it's really that need to want to do something. The difference is I've got all these years of experience. I know where the landmines are. Mm-hmm. So I know how to kind of maneuver around them. I also have resources now that I didn't have when I was in my 30s or 40s, mm-hmm. or even 50s. I've reached this level of success financially that, I own multiple commercial buildings in downtown Knoxville. I own a piece of dirt that's worth probably $4 or $5 million. Oh my gosh, I could never imagine owning anything for $4 or $5 million. And now I've got multiple properties that are worth millions of dollars. Of course, with that comes debt service and the things associated with that. I don't own those outright. But if you look at the balance sheet, if you look at the profit and loss of everything, we're doing pretty darn good. Awesome. And so because I have all this experience and I do counsel with young people, I learn new things, and I still counsel with people that are older than me, and my own expertise and knowledge through the years and with resources, there's no stopping us. There really isn't. I can only get in my own way at this point. And, you have factors that you can't control. You can't control interest rates. You can't control who's in office at the time. You can't control who your city mayor is and if they're doing things the way you want or not want. But you can focus on the things that you can influence. and you just don't have any concern about the things you can't control. That's by the way, that is out of 7 Habits. It's called Circle of Influence.
Yeah.
It rolls off my tongue because this is how I live my life now. But I don't know. I will tell you this. Everybody that I've ever known that retired from a job or their business was dead in 5 to 7 years. They just died. Yeah. And I recognize it in my dad. I recognize it in every person that I've been close to in my life. When they finally said, well, I'm done. I just want to go play golf. I just want to watch TV. I want to just travel. I mean, that would be fun. But these people, they slow down. Their mind slows down. Their bodies start slowing down. And I think maybe God even intends us to do that to prepare ourselves for the next life. But I don't want to go 5 years after I retire.
Yeah.
And I've made a mantra that I will never retire. The day I die, I will either be killed in an accident or I will be at work doing something when I keel over. I will be 90, 80, I'm 62. If I live 10 years, thank God. If I live 20, I'll be working in 20 years. I'll do something. And it won't be just mentoring young people. You know, people say, well, do something with your life. At least go talk to young people. No, I'm going to do something.
Yeah.
I want a legacy that does something. I want people to go, that guy worked until the day he died and he was happy.
Well, it's because I love what I do, right? It's like I don't feel like I have a job. I mean, I'm living the life I want to live, and I love what I do. I love the people that I work with. I'm passionate about it, and I'm like you. I guess if I were doing something that I absolutely hated and it was drudgery, and I'd be like, I just cannot wait to retire and go do something fun. But I love hanging around people who are where their work is their life and it's fully integrated, and there's like, I don't need to retire because I'm going to do this the day that I die, and I'm going to continue to make a difference in the world. I want to mentor people, help people, and I want to help more people, honestly, kind of live that out, right? I don't think that we were made to work in a job for 40 years that we absolutely hated, where you're spending so much of your life doing something that's just drudgery, and be like, man, one day I'm going to retire and I want to, spend 5 years on the golf course. I want to do something different.
Right. I'll tell you a quick story that happened a couple of years ago. There's a small restaurant, a pizza restaurant that opened in downtown Knoxville called Adobo Pizza. And this guy named Brian Strutz and his wife, Jessica, opened up this restaurant. And I'm like, I know those names. How do I know those names? And then in the local paper, they were doing an interview of Brian and Jessica opening up Adobo, which, by the way, has been wildly successful restaurant. And in the article, he was talking about how he met his girlfriend, now wife, at a restaurant in Farragut 24 years ago. And he learned how to make pizza at this restaurant called Kalamata Kitchen. And it dawned on me, oh my gosh, that's Brian Strutz, the guy that was our pizza guy. We taught him how to make pizza in the wood-burning oven. And his now wife, Jessica, was one of my lead hostesses at age 15 years old. Wow. And they met there, and they got engaged, and they got married. And here they are 20 years later opening up this restaurant. And he talks about how he got his start in Jim and Lori Klonaris' Kalamata Kitchen. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is full circle stuff, man. This is what we live for. We impacted someone's life so, insignificantly by just creating a community inside of our business where two people worked who connected and ended up getting married, and now they're doing it again. And he is so abundant and helps so many local restaurateurs in the market. He has a level of abundancy that far surpasses mine. Wow. And it's fun to watch. And I look at what he does, and I see what he does in the community, and I just get so proud. Knowing that he wouldn't even be in the restaurant business if he didn't work in my restaurant 25 years ago.
It is crazy. Well, let's have a moment of pause or double click on this particular point, because that's one of the things that I've noticed about your restaurants that are different from a lot of restaurants that Brandy and I go to. your restaurants, you create a space, an inviting space. It's warm, it's intimate. Cafe 4 was listed as one of the most romantic restaurants in America to go to. I remember that, coming out multiple times in various magazine articles. You've got this incredible, Kefi down in the old city. You've got Vida there right on Gay Street. And Brandy and I will go to a restaurant, and it feels like the methodology is, let's get you in, let's feed you as quick as we can and get you out the door. We want to turn the table. Whereas your spaces are more, stay here as long as you like. And we want to bring people together around a special table, special food. And so you can have community and you can have conversation. Your restaurants are very conversation oriented. And it reminds me of some of my favorite passages of scripture. And you and I are both believers. And I love reading, how Jesus would work with his disciples and people around him. And so many times you find Jesus in the New Testament and he's teaching while he's feeding. He's feeding somebody who's hungry. He's sitting down next to his disciples when they're tired and they're worn out, and he's created a fire and he's cooking them some fish, and he's tending to their needs and he cares about them and he's having conversation. And through the course of that conversation, he starts to open up and he starts to share more of his heart and he starts to talk and teach. And there's something about that in cultures all over the world where families, people come, like something intimate happens around a table when people are breaking bread and having conversation. And I can't help but think that you and Lori have been really intentional in how you design your spaces to foster those types of engagements and meals and intimate conversations. Can you share what you've learned in your industry and your business and around that?
Yeah, and before I do that, what you said was very strong. And Jesus did feed. I mean, he fed as many as 5,000 with just a few loaves of bread and a handful of fish. Mm-hmm. But I think there's an analogy there between feeding and spiritual feeding and bringing people together. Think about anybody's house that you've ever gone to for a party. Where do you hang out? You're hanging out in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. They have this elaborate living room and a theater screen and all this stuff and decks outside, but everybody tends to hang out in the kitchen. There's something magical about food, nourishment, spiritual feeding, emotional feeding, conversation, and the actual tasting of food. And so our restaurants, if you notice, you may never have noticed, you'll never find a TV in our restaurants. We don't have televisions. We suffer on game days because when UT is beating Alabama, no one's watching the game at our places because there's no television to watch it. We don't even put plugs in our restaurants for people to charge their phones other than at the bar. Mm-hmm. Underneath the bar, there's always a USB port or a outlet to plug in a phone. There is not a single outlet within arm's reach of any table because we really don't want people on their phones. Mm-hmm. We don't want people distracted. We want the interior of a restaurant. When people walk in our restaurants, we want people to walk in and go, whoa, I'm not at home anymore. I'm somewhere special. I'm in someone's living room. I'm at somebody's home. It feels warm that way. Yeah. And that is intentional so that people can come together at the table and have conversations. And you're right. We don't try to push people, through the restaurants. If people want to stay there hours, we let them do it. Now, sometimes our staff gets a little annoyed because they're trying to make money at the table. But in the end, we tell them that just let people stay and enjoy it. It'll come back tenfold over time because they're going to tell 10 people that wouldn't have come to that restaurant to come there. Mm-hmm. The interior of our restaurants are always warm. Lighting is always important. Sound is highly important. Smells are highly important. If you look at all of our restaurants, we always have fire included in all of our foods. At Kefi, we have flaming cheese at the table. And at some point, you'll look around the room and there'll be 5 or 6 flames coming up at different tables from cheese. We just sold Bella, by the way, in January. I had Bella over in Maryville. But at Bella, we had we did a cheese wheel at the table. We actually flambéed a 90-pound cheese wheel and created a macaroni and cheese dish at the table.
Oh, wow.
At Vida, for dessert, we've got this chocolate bowl, and we pour caramel and brandy on top of a bowl of chocolate with bananas and fresh fruit. It creates something for the senses, the smells, the eyes, the lighting, the music, the sound, the people that you're with, to create an experience. If you went into our restaurants during the day when we're not open and you just click on the lights, it's just another restaurant. It's just another restaurant. It's just a space. But when people come in, there's a vibe that occurs where the people bring the energy, and you couple that energy with the food and the smells and the light and the sound, and it becomes alive. Mm-hmm. And we've been able to successfully do that every single time. It's not just another place to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I have enjoyed bringing people. I've had my YPO group I've brought in from Atlanta, and we will take them into Vida, and absolutely love the downstairs area and the vault, and where you can get the drinks and you can have dinner upstairs, and every single space is just so interesting. And where Brandy and I are at the stage of life, it's just like there are multiple times where we'll be out thinking about a restaurant, let's get something to eat, and I was like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go to this place or that place. The ambiance, it's cold, it's loud, it's not inviting. I'm not in the mood for just trying to go find some calories. I want to find a place that feels warm, inviting, comforting, a place I can sit and relax and enjoy a great food and have great conversation. And you have been a master at creating those environments.
Well, I think that's really where our success is in creating the space. I mean, we put good people, good employees make our business operate. I mean, we have the best of everybody. We got great bartenders, we got great servers. Our kitchen staff executes flawlessly most of the times. The atmospheres are always inviting. The sound is good, the lighting's good. But when the customers come in that are like you, that are looking for something, you actually react differently at one of our restaurants than you would at another restaurant in town or a chain restaurant. Mm-hmm. Your personality changes. You actually become part of the experience. Mm-hmm. And you'll see somebody across the room and you'll be like, oh, I got to go talk to John over there. And he's having the same thing go on. And it creates this synergy in vibe in the restaurant and everybody's kind of participating. And we've been very intentional about that. And we'll continue to do that. That's really our hallmark, if you will.
Well, you guys have been absolutely amazing at it. And one of the things that I also would like to get your insight on, in the restaurant industry, and you're hearing a lot about this right now. You've got, pricing. You've got you hear about it in the news because the minimum wage around the country has been ratcheted up, and it's putting pressure on an industry where the margins are already pretty tight. And I've heard from you in the past, in the restaurant industry, a lot of times the staff turnover can be pretty high, and it can be difficult, right, to keep great quality, because you're not just looking for a warm body. You're looking for somebody who's going to embody the ethos of your restaurant, carry what you and Lori and kind of like your DNA throughout the place, right? The culture, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. How do you lead today? Has leading in this space, in this industry, changed over the years? And if so, how? And how are you motivating, training, and inspiring your team in these very special restaurants?
Lori really does all the leading. I don't have an active role in any of the businesses. And when I say active role, I described it earlier, I get the benefit of just showing up and shaking hands, and I get all the credit, which is kind of crazy. Lori gets very little credit, but the fact of the matter is she's the magic in the business. I mean, none of it would happen if it weren't for what she does. Mm-hmm. She leads with this mantra of excellence in everything. She's been leading that way as long as I've known her. If you're going to do it, if you're going to do something and you're not going to be excellent at it, I'm not interested. And if you've got the foundation to be excellent at it, and you need to be trained in excellence, she will stand by you all the way to the end and help you. And she's done that a number of times. I've watched her do it with people that have good foundations that just need mentorship, if you will. The industry is hard now. a lot of restaurants struggle on the financial side because costs have gone up a lot. Mm-hmm. It's hard to change up a menu. To print our menus in our restaurants costs almost $5,000 to do a reprint. So if you have an increase in a commodity, you can't just, change your price unless you're going to put a black marker on it. And our restaurants are elevated. They're not going to do it. We have to do a whole reprint of a menu. So we've gotten into the habit of changing our menus out twice a year at a minimum. As a matter of fact, Kefi just had a menu change about 2 weeks ago. And it enables us to take advantage of the market fluctuations in commodities, different foods that are available during the years at different times based on growing times. Mm-hmm. I think during COVID, there was a restaurant group that was formed. There was probably about 120 people in this restaurant group, and we were meeting together once a month, trying to work through the challenges of COVID. And people I would just go and listen. I didn't even participate. I just wanted to hear what other people were saying. They were all complaining about how they had lost as much as 50% of their staff.
Wow.
50%.
Wow.
And they had to close sections off in the restaurant. You would actually go to a restaurant and they'd say it's going to be a 20-minute wait. And you'd look around, there'd be 5 tables. You're going, well, I don't get it. Why? There's tables. Why can't we sit? Because they didn't have the staff either in the front or the back to handle it. And here we were down about 9 to 12% through COVID. We never lost more than 12% of our employees ever. And I couldn't understand why we were not experiencing those 40 and 50% losses, and everybody, and I mean everybody, was having these 40 and 50% losses. And so I went back to Lori and I said, what do you think the deal is? And she said, well, one thing is everybody was paying low wages, and we've never paid low wages. We've been paying dishwashers $17 an hour for the past 5 and 6 years prior to COVID. And all of a sudden, people are throwing out $17 like it's the norm, but we've been doing it for years. Mm-hmm. So we've always paid more money to our employees. Our average server makes about $60,000 a year.
Wow.
These are college kids. They're making more money in a restaurant with freedom to live their lives than they are when they graduate and go into the workforce.
Wow, that's amazing.
As a matter of fact, we've had people, it is amazing. It blows my mind away. Why do they make so much money? They make more money in some cases than our managers do because they're serving good food. There's a high level of volume, and people will tip a good tip on a great experience. Yeah. And so these servers are making 40, 50, 60. We had one server make over $67,000 at Cafe 4, which was a low price point restaurant. Mm-hmm. It was mind blowing. She knew everybody's name and she would welcome them, and they would remember. Her name was Carly. I mean, she was mind blowing. She ended up moving to Chattanooga and she's in nursing now, but she followed her dreams. Mm-hmm. But I think that the industry as a whole is suffering. I think you're going to see a resurgence back to the small mom and pop food truck, small shop, cafe, almost like my grandparents did. Mm-hmm. And have a small, 60, 70 seat restaurant that they can manage. They're not going to open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They're going to pick a day part and they're going to swing with it. They're going to enjoy their lives. I think people are settling for less now and quality of life more. Mm-hmm. And I think the government has a lot to play in that. I think the government has given out way too much money to people. And I think they are pushing people into moving away from work and becoming dependent on socialism. I firmly believe this is happening under the guise of our government. It makes me sick to my stomach, and I think it's making it harder. I think the chains are probably suffering the most. Independent restaurants like myself are probably thriving more than the chain restaurants, because chain restaurants, they're not going to pay more money. They have shareholders, stockholders. They got to hit those margins, and they got to bring a dividend. We don't, and we've reached this level now in our business where we have multiple streams of profitable income coming from different entities. We've got 3 venues. We've got the Square Room, Jackson Terminal, the press room that we have. We've got 42% of the catering market in Knoxville. We bought a big catering company out in October. We're now the #1 catering company in Knoxville. We've got a 5,000 square foot kitchen that produces food. We do a lot of work for the University of Tennessee. we provide about 180 to 190 weddings a year in Knoxville. And these aren't $10,000 weddings, man. Some of these are.
Tell me about it. I just had one, so I know all about it. I've got 3 more. I got 3 more coming.
Think of that. Yeah, think about 190 of those a year. You can think of the revenue that's coming in. It's pretty strong. Yeah. And then on top of that, we've got, so that's a whole division of our company is the catering and event business with these venues. And then we've got Vida, the Vault, and Kefi, and 1 or 2 more on their way. Plus, we've been successful in the sale of 2 of our restaurants. I sold Cafe 4 2 years ago. Yeah. I sold Bella in January, and these are 7-figure sales. So it brings in a lot of cash flow to be able to do other things that we want to do. But I don't envy the young entrepreneur getting in the restaurant business. I have a lot of young men and women who knock on my door and ask me for help. And I bet you that I've talked 75% of them out of it rather than 75% into it. Because you got to tell people the truth. Here's what you're going to expect. Bob, let me ask you, Bob, did your parents tell you what it was like to have a child?
Nope.
My parents never told me, and I had 3, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I did it. Yeah. And then I look at Bob Dickie, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that man's, if I'm going to ever send somebody to talk about having a family, I'm sending him to you. I want to hear from you what it's like to have a handful of a family. That's right. You've done it all. And bookend boys and everything. I mean, you got it going on.
Yeah, I can give some real life experience of raising children. I have 6 of them, and we love every minute of it, and we love the messiness, the confusion, the chaotic schedules. But you have to love it. You have to want that. You have to want that life, and it is so. And so, that, for young people, I want to hear what the advice you have for people who are getting into the restaurant industry. But just as the double click on this one particular point, I think that whatever life you're going after, you have to know that that's what you want, and ask people. Like I love the fact that people are coming to you and saying, hey, Jim, will you give me some advice? I want to go open up a restaurant. And you're giving them the playbook of what that road is going to entail so that they can make an educated, intellectual and discerning decision about their next 10, 15, 20 years, and they can say, you know what? Yes, I want to lean into this. I can't wait. This is exactly what I want. Or they say, oh, you know what? That's actually not what I was thinking it was going to be, and maybe I'm better suited to go do something else. And so, what advice are you giving people, young people? Let's first start with those 75% of the people that you have maybe helped them see. Maybe this isn't for you. What are you telling them? What if you're a young person wanting to start a restaurant, want to be successful? What does it take? What would your advice be?
The first thing I would ask them is, why do you want to do it? You got to have a why. I mean, everybody has to have a why for whatever it is they do. And if the why is not because they want to serve people, hospitality is the real why that puts those 25% in the business. But a lot of people look at it as it's an easy entry, as we talked about, it's an easier barrier to get into. And if it's just for money, I say, go do something different for money, because you can make a lot of money, using your savings, doing something else. There's people make money doing everything today. I mean, you could be a social media influencer and make money. The risks are low for that. It's probably a small percentage that actually make a lot of money. But the reality is, in the restaurant business, you're going to invest time, money, but more energy to get that restaurant open than you could ever imagine in your life. I mean, it takes me about a year from start to finish to build a restaurant. And that's me doing the building part. That's bringing in all the right experts to get the right furniture, the right materials, the right look, the right vision, the lighting, the sound, all the finishes, the operations piece that nobody ever sees behind the back of the house. It takes me a full year to do a decent restaurant. And that doesn't even include the food or the hiring, finding the right people to do it, because you can't do it on your own. You cannot do it even if you're operating a small cafe, you have to have people cooking the food, cleaning the dishes, cleaning the restaurant, managing the books. The restaurant business emulates every type of business, from wholesaling to retailing, from manufacturing all the way up the scale to every level, including that hospitality, which is the key factor.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't do it and have a smile on your face and wake up every day knowing that your goal is to make someone's experience be great, whether it's in the taste of your food or the environment that they're in, you're in the wrong business. If you're doing it because you think you're going to make a bunch of money and you think it's out there, no. And I start telling people, I just show them, all I do is show people a P&L. Hey, you want to see a P&L? Let me show you my P&L from last year. And I say, yeah, here's the restaurant. We did 3.2 million in sales. Man, I would love to do 3.2 million in sales. Oh, let's keep going down the list. Yeah. So you've got 3.2 million in sales, then you got your cost of goods. Well, cost of goods is going to run you 30%. So now all of a sudden you've spent $1 million in food. Now you're down to $2 million. And then you've got all your expenses, your rent, 15% of sales or 20% of sales. And you've got your labor, the taxes associated with it, and all the incidentals that everybody makes money down the road. And then at the very bottom, I'm showing them a net profit. And they're like, wait a minute, you did 3.2 million and you only made this much? And I'm like, yeah, that's it. And how much energy did you put in? Oh, a year of building it, and my wife putting this together, and we're working all the time.
80 hours a week.
Yeah. Oh, it's nuts. Mm-hmm. I used to do this about 20 years ago. I remember my employees used to complain. I would hear them saying, oh, they're making a killing. Look at all these people trying to get in here. They're selling this dish for $15. And I would get them around a table, a big round table, and I would get a stack of pennies, you know, in a roll, 100 pennies in a roll. And I would hand 6 people a roll of pennies. And I would say, open up your rolls. And they would open them up, and I'd say, put them in stacks of 10. They'd have 10 stacks of 10. And I went through the process with them. I said, okay, so take 32 of those pennies off the top and put those in this bucket. And I'd have a little bowl. Mm-hmm. And they'd take 32. And I said, that's your food cost. I'd say take 26 pennies and put that in there. That's your labor. Mm-hmm. And I went down through the thing. And at the very end, they would all have like 5 to 6 pennies left. And I said, that's not yours. You still have to pay. You have to pay taxes on that money. The government's going to take some form of those 6 pennies based on, you know, some form of tax, whether it's an LLC tax flowing through your personal tax return or whatever. So might as well take, you know, 3 of those 6 pennies and put it in the bucket now. Yeah. And they said, I've got 3 cents. I said, yeah, give me a penny. Yeah. They'd hand me a penny and said, that's my consulting fee. I go, here's my 2 cents worth. That's all you got left. And they walk away with 2 pennies. But you know what? That little trick showed them that it wasn't all about what they think. There's a huge perception problem in the restaurant business, that everybody that owns one makes all this money. And in the end, you really only make a couple pennies. Your heart better be in it for the hospitality, because that's what keeps people coming back.
Yes. And so it's great advice. And I would even go so far as to say, hey, there's a misconception problem or misperception problem of the restaurant industry. And I would even tie it back to one of your earlier statements about what's going on in the country as a whole, about capitalism, and specifically entrepreneurs and business owners. You know, now certainly there's data and statistics that we can look at, and we can see how the income gaps have grown in various areas, and there is income disparity. But when you take a look at Main Street America, and men and women who are an entrepreneur or a business owner, okay, we're not talking tech titans out of Silicon Valley or private equity in New York. Main Street America. You will invest an enormous amount of sweat equity. You've got your name on the line on bank notes and all sorts of, risk. And the difference between an employee mindset and an owner mindset is vast. And there's a lot of people who don't understand it. I have conversations even today where people kind of think that they're an owner or an entrepreneur. Then you listen to them talk and be like, no, you don't get it. You think you are, but you're not. Right. So being able to educate folks to understand how much risk is involved in operating a business, and the sleepless nights, right? Of you laying awake at 3:00 in the morning and be like, okay, am I going to make payroll this next week? Am I going to be able? Right? It's just I glamorize entrepreneurship and business ownership, but you have to. I love it. I love the life that I live. But I love the fact that you're sharing with people the ups and the downs and, every single aspect of it. And I think society as a whole needs to have a better understanding of it, as opposed to demonizing it and being right.
Well, I mean, yeah, capitalism now is a dirty word. And I will always be a capitalist. I mean, I believe in it. I'm able to give so much to the community that the government can take from us and they can give, but they're giving where they want to give it. Mm-hmm. I have the ability to give where I want it to go. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't do that without capitalism. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be able to bankrupt in 2002 mm-hmm. and
rebuild,
try again, and shake it off. And by the way, most people don't. You go through what we went through, going from literally millionaires to nothingaires overnight. Mm-hmm. Most people get lost in the toilet swirl mm-hmm. and they go down the toilet. They can't get their head right. Mm-hmm. We live in a country that allows us to step up, dust off, and go again mm-hmm. if you want. Yeah. And then the only thing that gets in your way is your mindset at that point. If you can work on the space between your ears, you can do anything. And not to push away anybody thinking about the restaurant business. We need more restaurateurs in the market. We need more people to step up. And Lori and I have always said we want to raise the bar in the industry in our community. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have focused on. And we did.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There are some really nice restaurants opening up downtown right now. And you know what I love the most about them? And they're going to compete with me. They had to raise the bar above Jim and Lori Klonairs. And so they are spectacular restaurants. And it causes me on my next one to raise above them. And I will continue to do it. I'll keep raising it until we have a whole city full of phenomenal culinary experiences. That's the goal. Yeah. And who knows, in 10 years, 20 years, we might be a food capital, like some of these big cities, because of the things that we did when we were younger, raising the bar to another level. Yeah. And I sometimes wonder, if we didn't do what we did in this community, what would all of our restaurants look like? There's so many that are all the same. Yeah. It's the same food, same menu. I want something different. Yeah, we're going to continue to.
Brandy and I, whenever we travel around, Brandy is constantly, she refuses. I have to if we go to a chain restaurant, she's kicking and screaming, right? She wants to go to someplace unique, someplace different. She wants to go to an establishment like yours, a local establishment. Well, to give a little shout out to you and your wife, not only have you guys have invested in the community and built some iconic businesses here, but you're also raised 3 phenomenal children, and your children find themselves involved in the family business as well. I love, going down and seeing your son and, seeing kind of like the next generation following in your footsteps. So you guys have been successful in other areas of life that are actually more important than the restaurant business. I know we're talking right now about your business, but I would say one of the things that I'm most impressed about you and Lori is the way that you've raised your family, how faith is such an integral part of your life and how you live it out. It's not something that are just empty words, but I've actually seen you live it out, and that's having equally an impact in our community. What's the question that I didn't ask that I should have? Is there something I've missed? Something that's important to you or something that you'd want to share?
I don't think you've missed any good questions, Bob. They're all good questions. You always ask great questions. I think if I were going to share anything with your listeners, it's follow your dreams. Don't let anyone or anything get in your way. You can speak anything that you can conceive in your head into existence, but you got to be willing to accept the risk that comes with that, the sacrifices that come with that, and, especially nowadays, hurdle the financial difficulties and challenges that get you there. But don't let anyone knock you out of your dream. If the restaurant business is your dream, like it was mine when I was 12, I mean, I wasn't going to let anybody tell me I couldn't do it. I never worked for Bill Regas, and he pumped out a lot of successful entrepreneurs. I mean, you know, some of the biggest chains in America worked for him. Wendy's Hamburgers, Dave Thomas worked for Bill Regas. The people that founded P.F. Chang's and Payways worked for Bill Regas. Randy Burleson, who owns local Aubrey's, I think got like 26 locations. Bill Regas. Mike Chase, Bill Regas. I mean, the list goes on. All the restaurant gurus all work for Bill. And Bill didn't work in the kitchen, and he didn't serve tables. He just was an ambassador that believed in people and had a spirit about him that he pumped belief into people. And at a ripe young age of 12, very impressionable, he spoke just a couple of words into me, and I watched this man, and I wanted to emulate what he had. Now, looking back on it, I mean, it was my ego. I wanted the fame that he had. And I pursued that because I wanted people to like me, and I wanted to be popular, you know? Yeah. A lot of people get in the restaurant business for that reason. It's a sexy business, especially doing what I get to do, walking around and shaking hands and taking credit and, you know, all that stuff. But it is hard labor. It is difficult. But if you love hospitality in this industry, you know, we're all called to serve other people in every aspect of our life. And there's not a better industry, period, to serve other people than the restaurant industry.
Then around the table where you're breaking bread, right? That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're giving words of encouragement right now, and I want to maybe ask how you would give words of encouragement to someone who might be listening, who's, you know, going through what they would consider the deepest, darkest challenges of their life, right? We've been living through some challenging times. We've got, you know, you hear everybody in terms of some of the storms that you and Lori had to go through. You mean your first restaurant failing, and you picked yourself up, and you like reinvented yourself, and you know, started again. You know, going bankrupt, right? So you've navigated a few of these storms in life, and I think sometimes people see someone who has been successful like you, an iconic businessman or woman in a local community. You're like, man, that's just been an easy road, and it's just, I want to be like them, but they don't understand that though that journey is often filled with not one storm, but multiple storms that a person had to navigate. So imagine someone's listening to this and they're going through one of those dark moments in their life. What type of words of encouragement would you give them? And what did you learn when you were in those moments that you can maybe say, you know what, this is what I learned, and I'm going to give this to hopefully motivate and inspire you?
So first of all, those storms, everybody goes through them. I don't care if you're black, you're white, you're rich, you're poor, you're a guy, you're a girl. Everybody has challenges on a day-to-day basis. We have family members that are sick. We have family members that no longer think the way we do, and we're ostracized. We have children that become the prodigal child. They leave us. They hate us. I mean, there's so many problems. We have boyfriend, girlfriend, marital problems, all these challenges. Know this, if you're going through something right now, look to your left and look to your right. The person there is next to you is going through something equally as bad. You just don't know it. That's issue number one. And then know that without these challenges in our lives, we would never grow as human beings. We wouldn't listen to people differently than we do today. We wouldn't talk to people the way we do today without the challenges that we've gone through, the tumultuous, you know, raging storms that we've gone through. I wouldn't be as compassionate in my own personal life if I hadn't have gone through some of the challenges. I'm going through major challenges right now in my life. Huge, probably some of the biggest challenges I've ever been through, bigger than all the things I even shared. But at the end of it, without those challenges, I wouldn't become the new man that I'm going to be. So don't run from them. Go into the challenge. Go in with faith and perseverance and prayer, and be obedient to your values. Take your values to the end. Don't give up on your core. And if you do that, you will get through the challenges. You may, by the way, you may not have the outcome that you want. And it's okay. Somebody told me something recently, and it's just so simple. It just makes a lot of sense. They said, if I'm looking down a hallway and it's got all these different corridors coming off of it, I cannot see to the left or the right what is around the corner. I don't know what's around the corner. It could be it could be a lion in one of those. It could be a guillotine in one. It could be a firing range in the other. It could be a storm in the other. I can't see what's down the corridors. But God can see all and knows what is around the corner. So put your faith in God and don't worry about what is around the corner. We also don't like to talk about it. We like to cover it up and not be honest, and we don't want to show our spots to people. Man, I show my spots to everybody. Lori gets so mad at me. Don't tell people we bankrupted. Why? We did. Yeah. Maybe it can help somebody. Yeah. You know, who cares? Did it affect me? Is there anything negative from it 23 years later? Did anything good come from it? Yeah. Was able to maintain my family. Mm-hmm. If I hadn't have done that, and who knows where I would be today. So just keep your head down, be obedient, stay in the Word, and just go, knowing that you're going to have challenges and that everybody next to you is having just as many. And we're all in it together. In the end, all of this is nothing. I mean, I can go till I'm 80, end up with 3 or 4 more restaurants, and who knows what. Maybe a hotel's in the works for me or something.
You would be awesome in that space.
Yeah, could be. I know. I'm working on some things right now. We need to take that conversation offline. You might be able to help me.
There you go. Let's do it. I've been wanting to invest in one of your projects. Come on.
Yeah, oh yeah. I've got a great project that I'm working on. I can't get through it. It's just it's bigger than me. I've always done something that I could accomplish. I could always stretch a little bit and hit something a little bit bigger than me. This one is like bigger than me. And I don't know if I can do it alone. I can't do it alone. I already know that I can't do it alone. But I just think that welcome the challenges of life. They're horrible at the moment, but when you get through them, and you will get through them, that's when you recognize the growth that you had as a human being, and we all become better.
Well, Jim, I just want to say thank you for taking time to invest with us today and share your story. I've been wanting to interview on the podcast for quite some time because of just your incredible journey. And I always get motivated and inspired when I hear you chat and hear the things that you're up to. And, you know, you're one of those guys that I hold on a pedestal, and I want to be like you when I get older. I constantly say that, right? So no. It's the other way around. No, I'm telling you, you're one of those guys that, you know, I think you have to have people in your life that are a bit ahead of you and that you kind of circle and you watch and you're like, and you watch how they live life. You watch how they do life. You watch how they handle success and also disappointment. You watch how they, you know, make a difference in their community. You say, and you need those role models, to almost be like a guiding star. And obviously, you know, you and I share similar faith and background. And so our, you know, ultimate role model is, you know, we want to walk in the footsteps of Jesus and, you know, do what Jesus did. But it's also important to have men, women around you that are also role models. And you've definitely been one of those guys in my life. I appreciate your words of wisdom, your words of encouragement. And I know that's going to be motivating and inspiring for people who are listening. Can't wait for my kids to listen to this. And I tell you what, one of their favorite experiences is when I take them to a Jim and Lori restaurant here in Knoxville, Tennessee. So you got to keep opening up great ones, and we'll be faithful patrons.
Some of your kids can work in them now.
Yeah, that's right. All right. I'll let them know. That's awesome.
Let's see how you handle it when they say, Dad, I met this guy. He's your friend, Jim Klonairs, and I want to be in the restaurant business. Oh, no.
I remember when Brandy was pregnant, I forget it was either Charlie or Zev. And Lori, your wife, she is such a sweetheart. And when she knew that one of Brandy's favorite dishes was the shrimp and grits from Cafe 4, and she had some of those shrimp and grits delivered to our house multiple times during Brandy's pregnancy. It's just, that's kind of the people that you are. And man, we love you, and anything that I can ever do for you, I'm one of those guys. I'll answer the phone call at 2 a.m. and be there.
I appreciate you. This has been great. It's been a great experience. I think this is the first podcast I've ever done.
Oh man, you're like an old pro. I would have anticipated you. By the way you handled all this, that you've done this many times. But
I kind of like it though. I like this Zoom thing too. This is cool.
Yeah, it is.
I called you the other day, like, where do you want to do this? And you're like, Zoom. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I heard about this new technology.
I figured out how to blur the background in advance, and I'm all into this. Next time I'm gonna wear a collared shirt though. I think I'm in my Viore today.
Oh man, Viore, that's one of my favorite. I mean, that's my workout gear. I could live life in Viore. That's what a phenomenal brand. Well, Jim, thank you so much for your time, buddy. I love you, appreciate you, and can't wait for this to come out.
Sounds great. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Today's episode was engineered by Mitch White with graphic and marketing by my daughter, Tristan White. Special thanks to Jim for taking time to share with us his insights and the things he's learned on his entrepreneurial journey. Please make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcast, or if you're an Android user, check us out on Spotify or wherever you go to listen to your favorite pods. If you like the show, please share it with a friend and give us a review. That's always appreciated. We look forward to spending time with you once again next week.